first segment, we're going to be talking about college basketball. With me today, we have Jack Hyde and John Lascala. So, we're a little late to the game. We missed talking about the Final Four, but I'm going to ask John. John, what can you tell me about the Duke game against? No, not the Duke game, but the Florida game against Auburn.
Florida against Auburn. It was a good game. Auburn had the lead for most of the first half, and I think even into halftime they went in with about an 8-point lead, and Florida just flipped the switch real quick. They got a great offense, and Elijah Martin had a big transition dunk on two Auburn players to get them going to take the lead in the second half, and they never gave the lead up. Walter Clayton, he was cold as ice down the stretch. Four we've probably seen ever, or if not in a long time. And he had over 33 points, or he had over 30 points in the Elite Eight and the Final Four, which hasn't been done since Larry Bird, I believe. And Florida, they just sort of asserted themselves in the second half and ended up taking over that game.
Right, and then Florida went on to face off Houston. Now, talking about Houston, for the Final Four, they went up against the Duke Blue Devils. Excuse me, Jack. What can you tell me about that game?
I thought it was a very interesting game. It was crazy ending, I gotta say. One of the most wild Final Fours I've dominating the whole game. You know, they were leading the whole time against Houston. It wasn't until like the last 2 minutes that, you know, Houston and their number one ranked defense, they showed what they could do. And they kind of just shut down Duke. Well, Duke, I feel like, also shut themselves down also. And, you know, we just saw bad turnovers and bad plays from Duke that ultimately led to their loss, like Tyrese Proctor missing a very clutch 1-on-1 free throw that ultimately led to Cooper flagging an over-the-back foul call, which did lead to them led to Houston getting the lead. So it was just a really hard collapse to watch for Duke, but it was definitely one of the more fun and interesting Final Fours I've seen in a long time against all one seeds.
Yeah, and now I understand why they call it March Madness. Everything is nothing's determined. Everything is in the moment. Nothing is guaranteed for any team. And so, talking about the fall, almost self-destruction of Duke, we kind of saw that we saw that for Houston when they faced off against Florida. Now, Florida won the national championship. This is their third title and their first since their back-to-back wins in 2006 and 2007. And this was also the most watched championship with 18.1 million people viewers, according to CBS, since 2019. So, Jack, I'm going to go back to you. What can you tell me was key to Florida winning the game in the end?
Well, it was just a crazy game. Kind of like you said, it was very similar to the Duke-Houston game where, you know, you saw Florida kind of, you know, trailing behind the whole game. And, you know, it didn't seem like they could find a rhythm in that first half. And it was just kind of, you know, very hard. You know, as John said, Walter Clayton Jr., he's been having a phenomenal tournament run. And he was pretty quiet that game. He had 11 points and 7 assists still on the board, which did actually ultimately, benefit the team. You know, 7 assists, shows that he was still out there making plays. But, you know, it wasn't until that last, I'd say 5 minutes that you saw Florida really get to work, and, you know, they really wanted to win.
And again, like you mentioned, Houston collapsed. Now, John, what was the final straw that broke the camel's back in the case of Houston? What caused their final collapse in the final 2 minutes?
It was sort of similar to how their game went against Duke. Their shooting just went ice cold. Houston does not have the greatest offense. They're known they have a hounding defense, and not that their offense is bad in any way. They have really good shooters. Their guard play is great, but their front court isn't the best. And when their shooting goes cold from outside, their shooting goes cold. They don't have much of an inside presence. Their biggest guy is 6'9". So if your shots aren't falling and you have guards, you're not going to be scoring. And just like Duke, ironically, they ended up going cold, and they basically went out in the same fashion. They had sloppy guard play at the end of the game, 4 turnovers in the last 2 minutes of the game. It really resembled the game that they played before, and it almost seems like they didn't learn from the mistakes of their opponent, and that's how their ship sunk.
Yeah, and one more stat about that game. With the Florida only held the lead for like 64 seconds, and that was crazy for them to finally take the win in the end. I'm gonna ask you, John, what should we look forward to with the teams next season?
Well, I would say we got to look for what teams are going to do what in the transfer portal. High school recruiting is basically done for the year. There's only a select few guys that haven't picked a destination, but the transfer portal is going to be huge. A bunch of guys are up in the air, and it really depends on what teams can add what pieces. BYU has done a really good job in the transfer portal, and they got the number one recruit out of high school. So I would look out for them next year. And sort of like this year, there was a very loaded one seed class. Me and Jack talked about that at the end of February, how this is going to be one of the strongest one seed years, and we were right. This is probably the strongest one seed year because it was so top heavy because of the portal and recruiting. And I would just say to look out for what teams are doing in the portal.
Thanks. And then Jack, back to you. Were there any standout players that you saw throughout the tournament this year?
Kind of like we just said in the beginning, I really feel like Walter Clayton was the biggest standout player for anyone in the whole tournament. I mean, as John said, he had 2 back-to-back 30-point games in the Elite Eight and Final Four, and not breaking, but matching the record with Larry Bird. So that was really interesting to see.
All right. Thank you both for joining us for this segment. We're going to be back with the NBA segment right after these few messages.
How was school today?
It was good.
Did you play volleyball?
Yes.
How's your serve coming? I think we'll work on it this weekend.
Amy's slumber party is this weekend.
Is your homework done?
No.
That was the deal we made. If you do...
Hi, Lauren. My name is Katie. We're gonna take care of you, okay? Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Very right.
You wouldn't do that. So why do you do this? Distracted driving kills an average of 9 people and injures over 1,000 every day in America. Put down your phone. Lives depend on it. Don't drive intoxicated. Don't drive intoxicated. A sobering message from AAA.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Buffalo Sports Insider. Now we're getting right into our NBA segment, and with me today we have Kevin McDermott, Ali Wilson, and Makai Rex. Thank you for joining us. So we're going to get, you guys were discussing all the hot news right now. You guys all were talking about the Denver Nuggets firing Mike Malone and also firing the this week. So I'm going to go to first. What can you tell me about this?
Well, in all honesty, it's a very interesting move to make about a week out from the playoffs. I mean, this team is, around the 3rd, 4th seed. And, an interview from last week kind of alludes to this fact where Mike Malone, was kind of downplaying his team, saying, they didn't watch film, they didn't listen, they, almost just, he might have lost the locker room. And it's looking like that's what this move is signaling to me.
Right. And Ali, you were talking about some internal disagreements. Can you go further into that?
Yes, I can. There were rumors talking about if there was a beef or altercation between the head coach, Mike Malone, and the general manager. And apparently, they decided to get rid of both of them. And I don't know if that was the right move that they should have made, because now going into playoffs, they're low in coaches and player morale.
All right. And then Makai, what this was like they only have 5 more games in the regular season. This is really, really crazy right now. What is some speculation against what players have to do with this situation?
Yeah, so we're hearing at least through NBA media, we're hearing that Coach Malone, because he was starting Russell Westbrook over Jalen Pickett, the general manager David Edelman had a problem with that. He thought that Jalen Pickett should be starting in the starting lineup over Russell Westbrook, and because of their clash, it seems like upper management had a problem with them arguing so late into the season, so they let them both go, which I don't know was the most ideal thing to do this late into the season, but we'll see how it unfolds for them in the postseason.
It seems like this season there's just been crazy things happening ever since like the Luka Doncic and Anthony Davis trade, and now this. So there's a lot going on, a lot of drama this year. Now, on another note, the Detroit Pistons clinched a playoff berth for the first time since the 2019 season. Kevin, what can you tell me about that?
So the Pistons currently 6th in the West right now, 43 wins. And like you said, they did clinch a win with they clinched a playoff berth with a win over the Toronto Raptors. This is a team that only won 14 games last year. And over the past 6 seasons, they've gone 94-290. Detroit has been a big stink for a long time. But this team has made a turnaround that no other NBA team has had in the entire history. And in my opinion, could be a very sneaky team going into May and even June.
So it's definitely a team that we have to look out for in the playoffs. Now on to some player news. So there's been some different reactions to different players, either celebrating or trash talking. For instance, Ja Morant's new on-court celebration. Ali, what can you tell me about that grenade toss?
Well, with the grenade toss, we're seeing what the NBA has been doing to Ja Morant for a long time now, trying to make him be a villain. I think he's just expressing himself, trying to have fun out there while he's playing basketball, just celebrating. But yeah, I think they deem it as violent. They deem him as violent, and yeah, he's going forward. I think because he is a role model to the next generation. He could lower down on the celebrations, but I think he should still be allowed to have some fun.
Talking about having fun and being allowed to vocalize your opinion, Luka Doncic was ejected in the fourth quarter after talking to a fan. Now, they were going back and forth throughout the game, and a referee mistakenly took it for Doncic talking to him. So when it comes to different players and their attitudes on the court, Makai, what can you tell me about what they should possibly look out for, especially with what Ali mentioned about the next generation?
I think we need more communication and dialogue between players and refs. I think refs can easily get hot-headed and make decisions that impact important games. The Lakers are fighting for positioning right now, and star players like Luka Doncic need to be on the floor to impact winning. So I think maybe a league meeting between players and refs should be held. And in regards to Ja Morant and his celebration, I think he should be able to express how he wants to express himself.
All right, thank you guys for joining us for this segment. Now we're going to be back after.
How was school today?
It was good.
Did you play volleyball?
Yes.
How's your serve coming? I think we'll work on it this weekend.
Amy's lumber party is this weekend.
Is your homework done?
No.
That was the deal we made. If you do...
Hi, Lauren. My name is Katie. We're gonna take care of you, okay? Ready? 1, 2, 3.
You wouldn't do that. So why do you do this? Distracted driving kills an average of 9 people and injures over 1,000 every day in America. Put down your phone. Lives depend on it. Don't drive intoxicated. don't drive intoxicated. A sobering message from AAA.
We're talking about the Major League Baseball. So we're going to show baseball some love. We haven't been doing too much of that on the show. But I have Jake Moss and Cal McTeague. How are you guys doing today?
Doing awesome.
Great. So right now, the National League West, they are considered the best team right now. They have some really heavy hitters. Kyle, what can you tell me?
Yeah, let's start off with the top three, right? I think they got the three best teams in baseball right now going at it. San Francisco Giants, who just revealed their new city uniforms. That was a big storyline online, but a very surprising red hot start for the Giants. Then, of course, you have the LA Dodgers, who buy about every free agent possible. Again, no salary cap in the MLB, so the Dodgers just spend a whole lot of money. And again, they just came off the championship last year, so expect them to be right up there. Then the San Diego Padres, who have been a very good team so far to start this year too. Of course, Tatis, they're doing his thing, and that Padres pitching rotation and bullpen is very solid as well. So again, that division's been the best in baseball. I expect it to be the best in baseball throughout the remainder of the year as well. With those three teams playing as good a ball as they are right now, I can't really see this slowing down.
Okay, it's going to be really exciting to see how they do later on in the season too. And now with torpedo bats. So I feel like this is a great use of somebody putting a physics degree into the real world. We have an article about that on our website at buffalosportsinsider.com. And we actually have the reporter with us right now. So Jake, what can you tell me about those torpedo bats?
Yeah, the torpedo bats sparked quite an outrage, which was kind of surprising. The way they work is basically the physicist working for the Yankees actually decided to move the barrel down towards the handle of the bat. That way, players like Anthony Volpe and Jazz Chisholm, who have naturally shorter swings, barrel the ball more when they hit it on that what would be thinner part of the bat. And it's led to a much higher barrel rate for Anthony Volpe, increased from 8% to 20% in the year. Jazz Chisholm's hitting for a lot more power than he used to. And at first, there was a lot of outrage saying these bats weren't legal, which the bats were approved by the MLB pre-game. And after that all kind of cooled down, we're now seeing them disperse all over the MLB, and more players are starting to use them. Elly De La Cruz had a game recently where he used one for the first time and had 2 home runs, a double. Like it's a physics thing that we don't see often in the MLB because of how stubborn the game is. So it's a pretty cool thing to see used consistently.
Almost like the MLB is getting a little bit more progressive as time goes on. So other than the NL West, there are some standout teams. So Kyle, what can you tell me about some of the teams we should be looking out for?
Yeah, let's start off in the NL East, going to the opposite coast there. The New York Mets, again, getting Juan Soto and Clay Holmes from the Yankees in the offseason, re-signing Pete Alonso. They're off to an 8-3 start. Pete Alonso batting .333, 15 RBIs. Couldn't ask for much better there. Just beat the Marlins. And speaking of Juan Soto, this is a guy who has wanted protection for a long time. Had it with Aaron Judge, one of his biggest assets or requests in the offseason to get a guy batting behind him. Pete Alonso is that guy, and they intentionally walked Soto the other night, and Pete Alonso cleared the bases with a double. So exactly what Juan Soto wanted. We look around at some other local teams. The Blue Jays 7-5, first in the AL East. So a little bit surprising there. The Blue Jays just re-signed Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to a long-term deal as well. Something nobody really saw coming. They all expected him to be the #1 first base free agent in this offseason. The Yankees 6-5, again, got off that red hot start, like Jake said about the torpedo bats, but have cooled off playing the Tigers. And the Pittsburgh Pirates, the last local team I'll talk about, 4-8 this year. Again, they have to sell the team. Until they sell the team, they're just not spending enough money. That team is going to be forever in the dumps.
Well, that's okay. Maybe not forever in the dumps, or maybe I wouldn't have said it like that exactly. But thank you guys so much for being here for this MLB segment, and we're going to be back after this quick break. So stay tuned.
How was school today?
It was good.
Did you play volleyball?
Yes.
How's your serve coming? I think we'll work on it this weekend.
Amy's slumber party is this weekend.
Is your homework done?
No.
That was the deal we made. If you do...
Hi, Lauren. My name is Katie. We're taking care of
You wouldn't do that. So why do you do this? Distracted driving kills an average of 9 people and injures over 1,000 every day in America. Put down your phone. Lives depend on it. Don't drive intoxicated. Don't drive intoxicated. A sobering message from AAA.
And we're back for our last segment. So we saved the NFL segment for last. There's just so much we got to talk about. Back with us again is Jack Moss. And also we have Thomas Bailey. So thanks for joining us. Now we're going to get into the draft. We're going to be on April 24th. We're going to be more in depth actually following the draft starting at about 7 o'clock, right, Thomas?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. But before then, we're going to do a little preview. So right now, the top 30 visits have begun. Thomas, what can you tell me about that?
There's a lot of interesting things, like the Falcons are going after safety Nick Amanawari. He's a South Carolina safety. It's an interesting little gimmick for the Falcons, I think, considering they also have a ton of needs for the secondary. I think that having a cornerback room like they have, I think that corner should be the need here, not safety, but I do think that is a good move. Also, the Bears, a little interesting here, getting Ashton Jeanty to come in on a visit. I think that could be an interesting fit at 10 if he is still there. Obviously, there's a lot of speculation that the Raiders might want him. Maybe a trade up into the top 10 from a different team before the Bears pick. I think that's still interesting there. The Cowboys had 4 running backs in for visits, so there's a lot to go into with them and running back as well. We could see something along those lines. But nonetheless, I think that the visits are very important, and I think that they're showing a lot about what these teams want come draft time.
Right, because it's very crucial to know both what you're going to get on field ability-wise, but also off-field personalities. We're seeing that's also another important thing. You don't want to get someone who just doesn't gel right with either your team or your fan base. Jake, what can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of these top 30 visits is more of the front office trying to get a handle on who the player is rather than what they put on tape. And I think the discrepancy between that we've seen with like George Pickens, who's a phenomenal player on the field, but then you have all these off the field concerns where it kind of takes away from the game he has, and now you lead to contract extension talks and all of that. So I do like seeing some of these things get ironed out. One of which being Isaiah Bond, where a few reporters have said there's been off the field character concerns. He's had top 30 visits with the Bills, the Rams. So getting some of these things out of the way, especially with coaches like McDermott, where even if they don't draft you after you come in for a top 30 visit, they kind of keep tabs on you and keep track of, your career path and stuff like that to see if they can get you back in Buffalo.
We're talking about Buffalo. We're going to take a Buffalo-centric look at things right now. So what are some of the top positions that Buffalo needs right now? I'm going to go back to you, Jake.
I would say the top 2 are corner and D-line. I do think there's some safeties out there that you can get if you still want a veteran ahead of Cole Bishop. But corner is the one where I like the signing of Dane Jackson, but he's not a number 2. You would like to get someone that could confidently play along the other side of Benford. And D-line has always been an issue. Daquan Jones has showed recent decline, which is simply just an age thing, getting some young pieces like Dwayne Carter last year. Getting a true one tech would really help out that team. So I do like the top 30 visit they had with Tyreek Williams, the D tackle out of Ohio State. Might have to be a trade-up situation, but he also might fall at 30.
Thanks. And then, Thomas, my question for you, what about some wide receivers that Buffalo should be taking a look at right now?
I really like Arian Smith out of Georgia. I think he could be a later round guy. I think he's got the game experience, playing for a prestigious program like the Georgia Bulldogs. They're a great team. They're a great program in general. And I think that he could be a guy to go and stretch the field for Buffalo, something we're still going to need come the season. I think he could be one of our gadget guys, maybe get out of the Curtis Samuel contract after this year and move forward with a guy like Arian Smith. I think that'd make a lot of sense for the Bills. Another guy that I want to take a look at here is Jalen Lane from Virginia Tech. I think he's another guy. Obviously, we have a lot of ties to Virginia Tech in the past. Tyrod Taylor, I still miss you to this day. There's so many guys out there that you can really talk about, but I do think that Lane would fit the system as well. So taking a deep dive on 2 of those guys, pretty good conference play as well in ACC and SEC conferences. I do think that would make a lot of sense.
Right now, so going out of a Buffalo-centric view right now and looking back at the NFL as a whole, what teams do you think will take the opportunity to trade back when push comes to shove? Thomas?
I think that the New York Giants are one of those teams right now. I think that if you take a look at the draft board and the way this is probably going to fall, you're going to see probably Cam Ward, the quarterback, at 1, and then you're going to see Travis Hunter. And then if it falls like that for the Giants, You're not going to reach for an offensive lineman this high. The next possible team that could potentially take an offensive lineman, maybe the Jets at 7. I don't even think that's a solidification there, though. I think that the offensive line is a big need for the Giants, but I think you can push that back a lot and still get a ton of draft capital. Another thing, the best available player at this position is Abdul Carter, in my opinion, at 3, if the board falls this way, and Mason Graham, who's a D tackle. So just 2 guys on the D line. You're a 3-4 defense, so you only run 1 defensive tackle. Mason Graham would be the backup. At 3rd overall, you're not drafting a backup D tackle for Dexter Lawrence. It's not happening. And then at edge rusher, you have Brian Burns, you have Kayvon Thibodeau. You don't need another one. You still have Azeez Ojulari, who's developed well as well out of Georgia. And because of those things, I don't think you take somebody there. I think you move back and let one of those QB needy teams move up for Shador and go and take their swing and get you some draft capital.
Right. And then talking about who goes top 5, Jake, what can you tell me about that right now?
Yeah, if I were to give my top 5 picks right now, Tennessee's been leaning a lot more towards the Cam Ward pick rather than the Abdul Carter pick. And I think that's going to lead to Carter falling to around the 4 area. So in order, I'd have Ward 1 to Tennessee, and then number 2, Travis Hunter to Cleveland. Number 3, I think is a trade back. I'd agree with Thomas. And I think New Orleans is a team that might trade up to get Shadir Sanders there. I think 4 is the receiver Teteroa McMillan to the Patriots. I do like the Diggs signing for them, but I don't think he's the guy. He's coming off an ACL injury. He's 32 years old. And then number 5, Jacksonville takes defensive tackle Mason Graham. I think he'll be the solidification in the D line between Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker that's really going to solidify their run defense.
And Thomas, I'm looking at you. You're nodding in agreement. I'm guessing you're in agreement with Jake's list.
The only thing I'd change here for Jake, not to nitpick a little bit too much here, but 4 and 5 I would change. I think that number 4 should be Mason Graham. I think they need defensive line. And one thing about this team, you're Mike Vrabel. He likes to build in the trenches first. I think Mason Graham is going to be too good to look at here and not take. And then I do think that Teteroa McMillan does round out that top 5 at 5. So basically just flip-flopping the 2. I think that Christian Kirk being released says a lot about this team. Yes, you have Brian Thomas Jr., but you can bring in a player like Teteroa McMillan and really get the ball rolling on Trevor Lawrence. I think this is the last year for Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. If he doesn't pan out this season, I think you go and take a look at a quarterback next offseason. So because of that, I do think that this is the move for the Jaguars.
All right. Thank you guys again for joining me for this segment. And thank you all. And thanks to all you guys watching at home for giving us your love and support and everything. Be sure to like and subscribe. Also, check us out on all of our platforms. And also check us out at buffalosportsinsider.com to read our articles. Our team of journalists publish articles on a weekly basis. And like I said, Jake was writing about the torpedo bats. There's so many things and content for you to find. So be sure to follow us and stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you for watching.